Hello again and welcome to this second part in my Shed Talk short series on shows and showing. If you didn't see the part one of this where we looked at types of shows and why we show that type of thing, some of the introductory stuff around showing, then I'll put a link to it across the top of the screen now. Do go back and take a quick look at that one. In this video we'll cover the schedule and entry form, so what to expect, what the schedule looks like, quick explanation of some of the various parts of it, and then how you transfer some of the information from the schedule into the entry form so that the show secretary can understand it and give you the correct cage labels for your birds, for your entries. We'll talk a little bit about making sure that you're entering birds in the correct class as well. As always, if you enjoy the videos and you haven't already subscribed, then please do hit that subscribe button. It does help the channel and of course promotes the hobby in general. And if you want early notifications, then do hit the bell as well, and that means you'll get those notifications come straight through to you. Again, please do like the video, and any comments are always welcome, and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, then let's have a quick look at the schedule and entry form and what they look like and how you complete them. So here is the schedule. All of the schedules look fairly similar and are laid out in a relatively similar way. The information may be displayed slightly differently, but in general, all the information you need will be in there. And I'll talk through some of the key bits of information. Clearly, the first thing is you want to know is where the show is going to be held, and also when and what time. So here we can see this on the front of the schedule. It's also contained inside the schedule as well, so that will give you information around the location, time and date. You'll notice on this page at the very top it covers the judges, and the number of judges will depend on the type of show you're at. Here this is a relatively small show, and is a caged bird society show, so it has judges for all the varieties that we will that are likely to be entered for the show. In this case, there's one judge covering the budgerigars and foreign, and one judge covering the Canaries and British. For bigger shows, those may be split down even more. So, for example, for our annual show, Oxford 9-10 annual show, it's like we would have a budgerigar judge, a foreign judge. The Canaries would be split down, and there would be a judge possibly covering the British as well. If it was a specialist show, so specialist in terms of budgerigar, like Swindon Budgerigar show, they would have judges covering the various classes. So they may have one covering greens, or they might have one covering blues, one covering spangles, and so on. So you can see. So there would be a number of judges. Why are judges important? When you're starting out, it probably won't be. It'll be less important to have a look to see who's judging. But as you progress, you'll get to know what some of the judges like and what they dislike. We know that judges are all judging to a standard, but it is the opinion of the judge, and some judges will perhaps will focus on particular features and less others. Some perhaps even prefer particular types of birds. You may hear that someone will say, oh, this judge will always put a Lutino up in front when he's looking at best in show. I don't think that's ever really true, but judges can prefer certain things. Some may really dislike flecked birds, and therefore will, if a bird's got a slight bit of flecking on it, will put it low down in the class. Others may not mind a little bit of ticking on the bird. The next bit of information really is about the entering the show. So you'll see that a bit further down it will talk about how much it's going to cost to enter. In this case, entry is free. You'll see here that there's a cost for entering sales birds. Clubs do this differently. In Oxford 1910, we charge £1 per bird that you're entering, and that's the commission, or that's what the show will charge for a sales bird. Some charge a commission, so what they'll do is they'll go, you can enter as many birds as you like, but we'll take 10% of the sale of the bird. So if you sell a bird for £10, you know, that would be £1 that you've paid, that the club would take of that sales. So that's various ways of doing it. You'll notice that there's some information about the postage here. Almost all clubs, I don't know any clubs that don't ask you to include a self-addressed envelope with a stamp on it in with your entry form. There's a bit of information under there saying who you should make cheques and postal orders payable to. Once again, there are very few clubs that will have an online system for payment, so, or a card system for payment. It just doesn't, you know, clubs just aren't set up for that. Most of them are too small. So if you don't have a checkbook and you don't want to get a postal order and pay the extra cost of the postal order, most clubs will allow you to pay on the day, but as I previously said, they'll expect you to pay for all the birds you've entered, whether you turn up with them all or not. The information underneath this talks about the show rules. There is a page that would normally cover the show rules in the schedule. Most clubs have similar rules, so will apply for those rules. I'll talk about one of them in just a second, in particular, particularly for those of you that are entering budgerigars into your first show. That's important. There's the information about who you would send your entry form to, and perhaps more important, or as importantly, the closing date for entries. So you'll see the closing date for this one was the 6th of July. That means the show secretary must have received your entry form by then. It's no good posting it on the 6th of July. The reason for this is it allows the show secretary time to do all the paperwork that they've got to do and to get the cage labels back to you in good time for the show. So please, make sure you get them in as early as possible. There's some information about the show day, so information around key timings on the show day. So you'll notice here that it says that the show will be open on Saturday morning from 7:30 to 9:30 to allow people to enter their birds into the show. So that's bringing your birds in and allows time for the show manager to ensure that they're all benched in time. So that means you can turn up any time between 7:30 and 9:30 with your birds and allow them to be staged. Once again, don't turn up at 9:30 and expect to get your birds benched. Turn up as early as possible. The last thing that the show secretary or the show manager is going to want is a whole load of people turning up at 9:25, and then there being a rush to try and get those birds entered and benched in time. So there is quite a bit of work for the show secretary and the show manager to do on that morning. So, but that just tells you when. It then says judging will commence at 10 a.m. All birds must be staged by 9:30, as I just said. This just allows plenty of time for the final bits of paperwork that the show secretary needs to get ready for the judges in order for them to start judging. So that's most of the information on this opening page around that you'll need to know in order for you to then make sure that you've got everything in time in terms of getting your entry form in and getting the bird staged. The next section then really is about the classifications for the birds. As this is a cage bird show, it's broken down by the various varieties of bird that we will have. So you can see there's a sections here for canaries such as the Norwich, Yorkshire, Gloucester, Border 5, a section for the foreign and a section for the budgerigar. I'll focus on the budgerigar, but they're all very, very similar. I suppose the big difference between the budgerigar, or the difference between the budgerigar and the most of the other varieties or sections that you're going to be enter, is the sections under which you will enter your bird. Under almost all the others other than budgerigar, you will either be entering as a champion or as a novice. So there'll only be two that you would need to worry about, so champion and novice. For the budgerigar, they have an additional grouping for you to enter under. So you can be classed as either a champion, an intermediate, or a novice. So those are the what you will be. If you're starting out, you'll be a novice, unless you're under 16, in which case you will be a junior or a juvenile. So, and that would be the same whether you're entering in the Canaries or budgerigar or foreign or British. There is always a junior or juvenile section. So let's just look at the budgerigar classes here. So at the very top, you'll notice that it says any age on one side and breeder on the other. So what that means is for the breeder, it must be, sometimes the breeder area is sometimes called the young bird or this year's bird. It must be rung with a BS ring or whatever the rules state for that particular show, but in most cases it will be a BS ring. So it must be close rung. It must be a this year's bird, so it must have so in terms of this show, it must be a 2021 ring on that bird. And I mentioned in my ringing, when I did the video on ringing, that they're colour coded. It makes it easier for the judge to see that it is this year's ring. And it must have your ring number on it. So if you're, when you join the Budgerigar Society, you're given a ring number, so it must have your ring number on it. That hence breeder. So you must have bred that bird this year, and you must be able to show it by the ring that's on the bird. For any age, that means it doesn't have to be rung in most cases, or if it is rung, it can have any ring on it, any aged ring on it, and from any breeder. So you can enter a bird that you bought from another breeder in the any age section. There are a couple of stipulations around that. In most shows, they won't allow you to show a bird that you bought from one of the judges. Sometimes there's a time limit on that, or they won't allow you to show a bird that you have literally just brought. So there may be some stipulations around that. In particular, the one around the judge is quite important. So that's the difference between breeder and any age. Underneath that, you will notice it says CH, INT, and NOV. So that just stands for champion, intermediate, and novice, and that's the same on both sides. So you will see. So let's just look at the breeder side for now. So let's assume you've bred a bird, and this year's bird, and you're going to show it in the novice. What you'll then look to do is to see, so look at what your bird is. Let's say you've got a normal grey bit that you've bred this year, and you want to enter it. So you'll go down the middle bit, find it where it says a grey, so it's somewhere down near the bottom here. You'll see it says, or rather, it's just a little bit further down, a bit below, and you'll know it says normal grey-green. That's not what it is. We've got a grey, a normal grey. So let's say you're showing your normal grey and it's a cockbird. So you find that, you then move across to where it then says novice under the breeder bit, and you'll see it says BS 142. So that's the number that you're looking for. So if you're a novice, you're only going to be entering birds that run down from that side there, down the novice side of breeder, or down the novice side of any age. The classes, so whether it be a normal green series, a normal blue series, a green series spangle, etc., etc., they may differ, and the numbers for the class will almost certainly differ. So you can't just go, well, I've got a grey-green or a grey bird that I'm going to enter in the novice. I know that was this number last time, so it's going to be this number this time. You need to get the class number. If you're showing, what I will say is that if you're showing in the canarias, they will refer to them slightly different rather than breeder and any age. They refer to them as flighted and unflighted birds. And what that means is that with a canary, before they molt out, or rather after their first molt, they don't molt their flight feathers in the first molt, so they're unflighted. They haven't molted out their juvenile flight feathers, but on their second molt, so in their second year, they will, so by their second year, they will have molted out their flight feathers. So they're flighted. That's my understanding of what that means. So if you ever hear someone talking about flighted or unflighted, that's what it means. We'll now move on and take a look at how you use the schedule to fill in the entry form. So moving on then to completing the entry form. Once again, entry forms can differ slightly, but generally they are fairly similar in terms of the information that needs to go on them. So across the top, fairly self-explanatory. That's your name, your address, and your telephone number. I suppose at this stage I ought to say that these forms need to be kept so that should, in the event of there being a problem, such as an outbreak of bird flu in an area, we can track back those birds or those exhibitors who exhibited at the show and inform them of any precautions they might need to take or any action they might need to take from DEFRA that DEFRA advised us on. So across the side here, it does say which section are you exhibiting in. Generally speaking, if you're exhibiting in any of the sections other than the budgerigar section, it would just be champion and novice, or juvenile just means junior, and if you're in the budgerigar section, then it would be champion, intermediate, or novice, or the juvenile or junior sections. In this case, if I was entering in the novice section, I'd just circle the novice section there. What I'll do now is we'll quickly go through entering a number of birds from the schedule. So let's say we've first of all we've got a number of, we've decided we're going to show a number of birds at this show. You don't have to do this, but I think it helps out the show secretary is if you put them in order that they appear on the schedule. So in other words, down here where it says class number, that's the numbers that we have here. So if I was entering a green series cock, so a normal green series cock bird, so one of these here, and it's this year's bird, I go across to breeder. Remember, breeder is for current year birds only, run current year birds only. And I'm entering it in a novice, So I would place in there BS136. Now what I mean by putting them in order is the order that they appear down here. So try and do that. You don't have to do it, you know, you're not going to not be able to enter a bird if you enter them in a different order, but try and do that. So let's say I've got 2 of these. So the number is for the novice breeder is BS136. So I would then place in here BS136. Next bit is for secondary use only, so don't worry about that bit. Then the description, so it would be normal green breeder. The nomination here is if you've got any so in the schedule it may be that other clubs are sponsoring this. So in this case the BS are would be, if it's a BS Rosette show then they would be sponsoring it, but you may have I don't know, Swindon Budgerigar Society may be presenting rosettes for the best placed novice who is also a member of Swindon BS, and that will be highlighted in the schedule, and it will then give a number next to it or a description next to it, and that's what you'd enter here. In this case there's nothing, so it would literally just be BS to show that Budgerigar Society. The final bit here where it says price without cage would only need completing if it's a sales bird. So don't fill it in unless it's a sales bird, don't worry about that. And then it would have to be in the sales class here. So I've got 2 of these, so I would now put the next one underneath it. So BS136, same again, and BS there, you could just do the same again there. And that would be those 2 birds entered. Let's say I'm now entering an opaline grey-green, but it's an any age bird. So once again, I go across to the schedule, I find the opalines, so it says any colour opaline cock, so in this case there's no specific one for green or grey-green, so opaline cock bird, and I'm entering in a novice any age, so this time I need to come across to here, opaline, any colour opaline cock bird, come across to here, any age, BS 63. So in here I enter BS 63, and I put here any colour opaline cock. I should have actually put a cock on the top of there as well, and this is any age, and again my nomination is for the BS. So you would then carry on going through the schedule for all the birds that you're entering. Let's say in this case I'm just entering the 3, but you'd go down the same way. So the thing to do is to make sure that you're double checking the number next to it, and bearing in mind in almost all cases, and in fact in all cases, there will be a section or a class, sorry, for the cockbirds and a class for the hens. So just make sure you're not entering a hen in the cock class or a cockbird in the hen class. You know, there's nothing worse than seeing your bird wrong class. You know, so you've got your best bird out and goes to the show, goes in front of the judge looks at it and says that's a hen, not a cock, light green, and therefore he will wrong class it. You know, wrong class will be written on the cage label, and it would then be there will be a description as to why it was wrong class, and he would just write hen, not cock next to it, for example. I mentioned before that if you've got a bird that is a mixed variety, go to either phone up the show secretary who is running the show and just double check which one's it in, or you can find the information out by looking in the BS guide. So for the categories for the relevant shows as to which one it would go in. So that's what you would do if you've got a bird that is more than one variety. You can't see it obviously on here. There is I suppose, a hierarchy in terms of which class it would go into. We filled our form out, we've double checked it, triple checked it, made sure we're happy with that. We then go to the bottom of the form and make sure we've completed here. So there's a little bit of double checking information over on this side. It says it must have this year for breeders, it must have a closed ring, personal ring of the current year of the actual exhibitor. So it must be your one. The other bit of information over on this side is, in this case it says entries free. If it wasn't free it would say entry per bird 50p, and then you would put the total number in there of it, so it would be 350p's, which is £1.50. I've entered nothing in the sale, so I just put a 0 in there. If you're paying your subscription at the same time, a lot of people do pay their annual subscription, it shows, you would put the annual subscription in there. For Oxford and District that would be £3. If you've already paid it, it's nothing, you just leave that blank. Total amount of cash, so even if you're putting a cheque in, just fill it in there. So that would be, in my case, so let's say this is we're just entering it and we're paying our subscription fees, £1.50 plus £3. That would go to being £4.50. Oh, a mental maths there, we're struggling a little bit. Here it's Silverback's meals. So at many clubs they will provide a lunch if you're staying for lunch, and it will put a cost in there. You don't pay for the meal normally, in almost all cases, until you turn up on the day. So you would put the number of meals. So let's say it's you and your wife going along, or you and your partner going along. You would just put 2 meals in there. The final bit, and I'll talk about this, is the bit down the bottom here where it says, would you like to steward? There are a number of reasons why I would suggest that as a beginner or a novice, first time show, that you offer up your services to steward. Firstly, stewards will remain in, so once you've dropped your birds off, you can remain in the show hall. At some shows, they wouldn't allow that. They don't allow exhibitors to remain in the show hall. They would ask them to either leave the show hall and go and find somewhere else to stay, or move into a different room. So it allows you to stay in the hall. More importantly, it allows you to see how the judging happens. So what actually happens and the staging of it gets you the better understanding of how the show runs and how a show runs. If you introduce yourself to the judge and let them know that this is your first time at the show, he may talk you through, some judges will, some won't, what he's doing and explain why he's put one bird in one place and another. Almost all judges would do it at the end. So after he's placed the birds, if you were to say, why did that particular bird win, he would talk you through that. And I must admit, I still do it even now. I will go up to the judge at the end of a show, and if I get a chance, just say to him, what were the key features on this bird? What is, particularly if it's your bird, what's this bird lacking? Do it, if you're going to talk about your bird, you must do it after the judge has finished judging all of the birds, because otherwise you could be seen to be trying to influence the judge, and therefore the bird might get disqualified. So don't talk to the judge about your particular birds until after the show, but you can talk to him about overall, generally, why he's placed birds in a particular order. Say again, some judges don't like it. Majority of judges, if you're your first time showing or very early on in your showing career as a novice, then they would they like to interact with it. And finally, don't forget to sign it. So in most cases there's a requirement for you to sign the entry form. Well, that's just about all we've got time for in this second video. In the third part in this series, we'll take a look at the equipment and also at how you prepare the birds for the show, the sort of thing that you're looking out for. And then we'll also cover what to expect on the day when you turn up to the show. So a little bit about the sequence of the show. So as I say, that's all we've got time for. If you enjoyed the video, do hit the like button. But then again, as always, please do stay safe and enjoy your birds.